What's up, everyone? Good morning. Happy Friday, YouTube, and I hope everyone's doing well. And in today's morning market update, if you will, there isn't really too much to talk about. There's not that much news to go through. There's very limited news events that had come out. There was a lot of focus this week on the inflation data, right? And that's what it was. And overnight, we didn't really see too much. We're still getting that continuous bid. And I'm going to talk about some of the ideas that I have for next week along with what the next potential move in this market is after this continuous, just strong bid, and what some of this inflation data, what some of this Fed stuff might mean for us in that sense. So, realistically, let me just take a look at this. Realistically, a lot of people have been talking about how we are entering a new bull market, how inflation has peaked, how a lot of these things have occurred without actually seeing continuous data, right? You see one data point, it's not gonna be enough for everyone to really just shift the narrative realistically. Next week, in terms of the US news, we got that core sales data. We have some FOMC meeting minutes, right? It's not going to be anything that drastic, but it's going to be that monthly meeting minutes event. And then everything else is very neutral in terms of the news front. So, reminder, into July and August, you're typically seeing a slower financial market because a lot of people are actually taking time off, right? There's not that much trading going on, there's not that much volume in this market. And what we're seeing is just more subdued um, buying right now. We're seeing a decent little bid that's shaping up. And is it on the best volume? No, not necessarily. If we go like week by week, we can see that we have entered into an area where there is actually some substantial buying from those lows. And are we at a turning point? It's pretty hard to tell, but in and around that 424, there is a huge level on the SPY talking about that distribution ledge. And something that I've been playing around with recently, not only am I looking at the options order flow, but I'm also looking at the market makers' delta positioning on ETFs and also gamma positioning on ETFs. And there's a really big level that's been identified on the SPY as 429 and 430 next week, which if we do get there, there's going to be a large sell block that does most likely come in. But right now, I think if we can hold this 424 area, 425, I think the SPY is in due for the retrace coming down into that 416, 415 area, where again, we're going to have to readjust what the next potential move is. So I would be a little more inclined to take a look at some of this downside slip into next week. Now, I don't know if Friday shapes up like that because there has been a very strong bullish flip. Now, do I think that the bullish flip is a flip to a bull market? No, not necessarily. It's very difficult for that to happen until we see continuous data. And if we're talking about the current economic situation, the current Fed monetary policy situation, it just does not seem like there is a flip to the bullish side. We saw even yesterday Microsoft, not only in the midst of freezing hiring, they went as far as to cut contractors. So layoffs like this, increasing food and shelter price that we saw from inflation this past week, are not economic events that would happen in a bull market or in a flip to a bull market. We're in an area where price is topping out. And one of the main things that I'd like to look at is overall market breadth in the market and how those stocks react, right? So there's still that potential to turn the breath. We've been sitting at this high for quite some time, but again, maybe a catalyst into the fall, maybe something like that. But a lot of puts have been activated for October, November, December in terms of these larger ETFs, right? Very large millions and millions of dollars into these puts. So it's something to consider. Now, I don't think we flip from this 424, but it is an area where I'm going to start looking on the SPY to actually flip things to the downside, see how far we can go from that. I wish I could screen share, it'd be a little more effective. But 424 area, 425, targeting that 415 area because that is where a big delta positioning on the market maker front is. And ideally, they would like to see that area hold out. So that's an area that I'd be watching. If I just quickly take a look at these futures here, um, I do think the next potential move is to the downside. How far do we get? It's not that easy to say, but for 140 on the futures would be an ultimate target to kind of see if how prices readjust from there. 418 4180 is a pretty key intermediate target. I don't know if we get that by the end of the day, but at some point next week, I would like to see that 4140 trade to kind of readjust and see, will the buyers pick this up and will we get that actual turning point, or is it something that we're going to break through and experience a larger shift to the downside? But if we take a look at this on a day-to-day basis, we have an area at 4232 to 34. That's going to be a huge pivot, very strong volume profile area right there. If we accept above it and rebid aggressively, especially above 4236, if we rebid aggressively above that, I think that they might try to take this over to the upside. But as long as we can hold the 4232, 33 area and continuously reoffer, I think that they can get a slip back down to the downside and go and test that 17, 16, 18 area, and ultimately come into the 04s to the 07s and see how price kind of navigates from there. So those are a few key areas to the upside. We can take a look at the 4242 area. That's going to be a huge resistance, and then above that the 51s and ultimately the 60, where we kind of rotated aggressively to the downside from yesterday. So I don't think we break the highs of yesterday. I think if anything, we get kind of subdued action to a little more downside action today, and see if we can print to the downside in the coming days into next week. There's a lot of negative delta for those positions on the SPY, so we'll see how that shapes up. So thank you all. We'll chat soon, and why don't we get ready for the weekend? Right, it's Friday. Remember, we don't have to get too aggressive on a Friday. We don't have to make all of our money on a Friday. We take smaller risk. We risk some of the profits from the week into Friday, and then we'll go from there. We don't want to ruin our weekends. We want to enjoy our weekends. And divergence king, I totally agree with that. This is not the bottom for the indices for sure. I'm just looking for where that turning point is, and it's going to be a little difficult to bottom without a catalyst that takes us to that bottom. So will it happen this summer? Doubtful, considering the summer's almost over. May it happen in the fall? Maybe not. Maybe next year. So we'll see how that shapes up. Happy weekend, everyone, and let's get ready. I'm a little more bearish going into next week, but again, things can change. I'm just watching the positioning for the market makers. Take care. Check us out at TradeProAcademy.com, and we'll see you guys in our live room. Enjoy the weekend, though.